So Gwen, I mean, this is so magnificent, and one has to question, how did Gana do it? She had 6 husbands. Where did it all start?
Well, it started with a Russian count that she met when she was a teenager in the Russian courts, and she eloped with him when she was 19, almost 20. And that got her immediately into Russian aristocracy and a certain level as well. He ended up contracting tuberculosis, and he went into a sanatorium in Switzerland, and she went with him. She felt it was her wifely duty to, you know, go through the cleansing that he was doing, except he didn't. He was a party boy, and he would run off with his friends while she was stuck being austere, and she didn't like that, so she left him. And that's when she really started her opera career. She met, she came to the United States to expand her career, and she had a little trouble with her voice, and she went to a doctor, Dr. Frankel. He fell in love with her, and within 10 days they were married of having met. He introduced her into New York,
Another
society
social circle,
and affluence.
Right.
He died after they were married for some time.
Was she a bad cook?
No.
I mean, something had to be killing off
She
these
was
husbands.
marrying older, wealthy men, except for the count. The Russian count he was older than her, but
Would you say this was a modus operandi?
I think that at the time in Madame's time, women didn't have many options.
So the option was to find a wealthy
You
husband.
you marry well. You try to marry well.
Right,
she was stunningly gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
So
the pictures are
she
amazing.
and very smart.
Right,
So
right.
she just kept marrying older men, and they were just throwing themselves at her.
Unbelievable.
So her third husband was Alexander Cochran, the wealthiest man in the world.
And she met him on a boat?
She met him on a cruise ship.
Oh, my goodness.
After Frankel died, she was going back to Paris. All her friends said, just come back to Paris and start fresh. And Alexander Cochran was on that ship. And he kept seeing her, and finally on the last day he made himself obvious to her and proposed to her by the end of the day. She refused him because she didn't really like him. And he was persistent. He was a man who was accustomed to having what he wanted.
And he had deep pockets.
And he had the deepest pockets in the world.
The world.
He was a carpet mogul. At any rate, she finally relented and married him, and really didn't enjoy it because she felt he was a very miserable person, although he threw tons of money at her, lots of gifts. At the same time, on the same ship, her next to-be husband, Harold McCormick, was on that ship. He and Gana Walska knew each other.
Right.
His family had supported the Chicago Opera House Chicago, and she had always hoped that she would be able to sing there, so she had acquainted herself with him. Well, he had fallen in love with her, and he was on the ship to go to Switzerland to divorce his wife, Edith Rockefeller, so he could propose to Gana. Now, when he found out, after being in Switzerland, that she had married him, he rushed to Paris and insisted on seeing her on their wedding day, and said, "You cannot marry him." She said, "Well, it's already done." And he said, "Well, you must divorce him immediately." Well, eventually she did divorce Alexander Cochran because it was not a good marriage, and he had divorced Edith Rockefeller, and they were married.
This was you have to understand, this was a very scandalous series of episodes
very scandalous.
in her life, and the fact that 6 husbands acquired were actually part of the reason why this beautiful garden exists. And doesn't the name Gana stand for home?
Now, Gana is a Russian derivative of Hana. Her real name was Hana Puaz.
Hana Puaz, Gana
And she
Walska.
changed it because a respectable woman did not have a career on stage. And a respectable woman who was married, and she was still married to the count, certainly didn't do it. And so she gave herself a moniker, Gana, as a derivative of Hana. And she couldn't come up with a last name, but she really loved the waltz, so she said Walska, Gana Walska.
There's hope.
And of course, if you're an opera diva, you are a madam. So she's Madam Gana Walska.
Well, there's hope for all of us, and we can create new names, and there's always Crystal Cruises. So don't give up. Let's see more of the garden.
Okay.